speaking of weird, Nancy Drew. My first thought when watching Nancy Drew was, Reed just presented this idea, and then here we are.
Right? I was flipping out.
So Nancy died.
Right.
She died for a hot sec. I couldn't believe it. While it was happening, she was walking toward the light. I was like, oh my God, is she going to see her mom? Like, did I really predict that so soon? I didn't want to predict it at all, to be honest. It did not happen. She did not see her mom in the northeastern corner of heaven.
But she did see someone else on her way to the light.
Yeah,
She did. There were a lot of like subtle jump scares in this one of like things behind her and around her. But I'm curious to know, like, what was it, Dead Lucy that she was inching towards? Okay. Oh my gosh.
Which I loved because she's back.
Yeah. We missed you, Dead Lucy.
Yes. She's so terrifying, and yet she feels like a guardian in some way, which is why Nancy being like, I can't find her, and she's like put all the ghost traps around the house so she could catch Lucy, was very cute.
Yeah, and I mean, not to jump right to the end, but when Nancy finally did the thing that she had been avoiding all episode, the fact that when she said, yes, I'm going to do this, Dead Lucy then just sucked herself away through the doorway, like, that's my girl, Nancy, you do it.
But this episode was a continuation of Nancy realizing how much of a wall she puts up, which is funny because she still put the wall up. Like her dad from jail was he calling her twice a day, trying to get her on the line? I know it's at least once. He's using all of his call time to get in contact with her, and she's like, he's going to hate me, and I'm like, he's trying to call you. It's been 14 days. Pick up the phone.
It did a very good like character swap between the two, because he wouldn't talk to her or anyone when he was arrested, and you're like, oh, what's the dynamic here? Has this just destroyed the recently repaired friendship or the kinship? And now all of a sudden she won't talk to him, but it's not over what he did, it's the guilt that she feels. And again, I feel like this show has done such a great job of, even episodes that aren't always Nancy centric, she always has a great character moment or journey throughout them, and this one was absolutely no different than that.
Sure. And I like that that everyone was kind of weird around her. Like usually everyone's kind of fine, but they didn't know how to talk to her. And so they're like, it's fine. You forgot the cake. It's fine. You forgot the party, the day he was coming back, the flowers, everything is fine. And it's not.
Yeah, they were really forgiving with her.
They were. Well, because her dad's in jail, so I mean.
Yeah. I'm like, my brain is swirling with all of that whole storyline with her dad in jail. I'm like, I don't know what to think.
Yeah, but it matches because she doesn't.
Yeah, it's hard to like land on a thought for that storyline. Because at one end, I'm like, oh, she feels guilty. And the other end, I'm like, but she's being selfish, not answering his calls. Because like, it's only hurting him more. I was like, I don't know. Nancy, I don't know what to think yet.
And it was also been interesting is that while this is definitely, again, Nancy was at the heart of this episode and her father was at the heart of this episode, this was very much felt like the one where the Drew crew was kind of born, like the dynamic, because it was definitely, it felt like, if you could call it something, it would be Nancy Drew and the Drew crew, because they were as important to this episode, if not even more important than she was, because we've said every single episode she's got such a quality that she puts up walls and ignores people. And yes, she learns her lesson on an episodic basis, but I feel like this was the real moment where she learned the definitive lesson going forward, that these people will be there for her regardless of whether she wants them to be or not. And the fact that like the great Nancy Drew, so cool to see her be like the town's hero now, the hero of Horseshoe Bay, but the great Nancy Drew actually failed. She missed the signs that the rest of the team picked up, and that's okay. Every hero needs their backup from time to time, and I think that was imperative to her to make her realize that if it hadn't been for them, she actually would have stayed dead. She would have been gone. She lost this mission, and I think that's probably my favorite thing about the episode, and that every character had their own purpose this time around, and she realized that, because even if not every one of them helped him in this episode, like Bess, for example, had her own storyline in this episode, Bess has helped her before over the years. Nancy's helped Bess, or over the seasons, Bess has helped Nancy over the season, and vice versa. It's been such a working friendship. And I think Nancy realized now that these aren't just her colleagues, these aren't just her co-workers as far as solving murders goes. These are her friends. And I think that's still such a learning game for her, and she's starting to figure it out.
You know, when Bess was doting on her at the end and she was like, you don't need to do this. And Bess was like, I want to, like, leave me alone. And then she finally just like accepted it. It's hard, I think, for Nancy to accept love. And
Mhm.
I think we've seen reasons why. And she's still kind of learning to let it in. Can I just say though that this episode I think was really, it's always really effective in its suspense, but when the show puts its lead in so much danger, like I was terrified. Like I was like so tense when I was like, oh my God, is she gonna die?
Mhm.
And like even though I know like the character's name is in the title of the show, there's still 2 more seasons and 1 on the way. I'm like, I know she's not really going to die, but I was still like terrified for her. And I think that's really rare for a show to do that as well as it did. I mean, I'll speak for myself. I was like so in it and like terrified for her. But I think that it can be kind of gimmicky sometimes in shows where they're constantly putting their main characters in danger, and you're like, there's no possible way that they can kill these characters. Like, it's just not going to happen. But the way that they pulled it off in this episode, I thought was super well done because I was just on the edge of my seat. Actually, I was in bed watching it and I was just like so tense. But I thought it was so well done.
Yeah,
It was.
she was human. I think that's the most important thing. You see so many shows that obviously have these super powered heroes or whatever. And of course, when you're in those kind of predicaments, their life will be in danger or whatever, but they're still super at the end of the day. This episode did such a great job of highlighting that even in spite of her heroic reputation as the hero of Horseshoe Bay, Nancy Drew was inherently human, and her life hung in the balance. She made some flawed decisions that got her into the situation in the first place. I think the humanity of it all is why I love this episode. And I think that's why it really highlighted those stakes that Reed was talking about, that you really just felt like she could die, even though you kind of knew she wouldn't. For a brief few minutes, you were like, are we actually going here?
It's because when you have the Kennedys acting
Mhm.
paired with the choice the writers made of having you hear Nancy's story about how she failed her driver's test and what her dad did to make her feel better, and how he taught her that to fail is human. And then she slowly realizes that I failed. Like I just failed here and now I'm dying. Plus the way her voice gets tiny when she says she doesn't want to die. And you're like, I know my heart was beating fast when like Nick and George were trying to figure it out. I was like, I need you to figure it out faster. And like, especially when you cut to Ace, he was like, yes, got the doors open. I was like, okay, but save Nancy. Leave the doors open. Let's go get Nancy. And when Nick carried her out of there, I'm like, y'all move. We have to go. And I love that they didn't even let you breathe even after she leaves the room, because you have to find the antidote. But I do love that Nancy gave them the clue by having figured out that it was on the ring.
Just seconds from dying, she is able to pull the ring off of that person's finger. And I'm like, how would I love her.
She's amazing. Like just to still be in fear of her life and still just as calculating and trying to figure it out at the same
Can I
time.
bring up another theory that I have that
Ooh,
just
yes.
popped up in this episode that I kind of wish I was keeping track of in the previous 9? Okay, so when she goes into the abandoned school, right? She's alone and she has her beanie on.
Mhm.
And then when she sees the rest of them come in, I think it was just George, Nick, and Ace, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
And they're like, we're your friends, we're doing it too. She immediately whips the beanie off. And I'm like, is this a visual motif where whenever she's like
so.
alone, she has the beanie on, and then when she like opens herself up to like having help or like whatever it is, the beanie's off? Or am I thinking way too far into this?
No, I think you're correct, because in the first episode, I think when she's talking, Nick finds her when she's staked outside of Ryan Hudson's
Mhm.
house, it's the branch snatches her beanie off.
Yeah, the
and
tree.
the tree. And then I think she takes her beanie off when her dad arrives at the site to go looking to see where the little girl
I was
was.
trying to remember that and I couldn't remember.
I think you're onto something. I do think she removes it, like it comes off her head whenever one of them decides to come on the adventure with her.
So I'm gonna predict that eventually the beanie stops making appearances in future seasons. Yes. She doesn't need it anymore. The security blanket is gone.
The security blanket her mom knit her because it's made of cashmere. Yeah, because I remember that line.
Got chills. So now, in addition to Ship Watch, we have Beanie Watch.
Yes. Speaking of Ship Watch, though, all three of Nancy's men were in this episode.
Can I say, yes. I still don't trust Owen. I don't trust him.
It's understandable. He was being weird.
He came into Bess, no receipts. He's like, we're first cousins. Bess, innocent sweetheart, is just like, yeah, we're let's get cake, champagne. We're cousins. I'm a Marvin, and I'm like, girl, we need where's the material?
Yeah. I felt like for being such, again, character moment, for being such a big part of her story, that was very much swept under the rug for the episode of the week story. And I don't think that was bad by any means. I think that was very much intentional. So it feels like we're definitely going back to it at some point. Considering the fact in the previous episode, we thought Owen almost didn't want her to be a cousin, to now suddenly being so accepting of the fact, oh yeah, you're a cousin, no big deal. Is there more to it than that? Does he have an agenda? Do the Marvins have an agenda? What is going on here?
There's gotta be. He lulled us into a false sense of comfort with just like joining the Drew crew and whatever their side mission was with the Hudsons, that I don't know. My rule with the show is that the only men that I trust are Nick and Ace. That's it. I'm sorry.
It's a good rule.
That's a good rule,
yeah. Until proven otherwise, it's only Nick and Ace for me.
Yeah, because Owen was like calm. Like Nick does walk into the frame when he starts asking about the Roman coins, and Nick takes responsibility for them melting. I also love how he's like immediately protective of Bess. He's like, so why are you here? I mean, some of that is still the jealousy about Nancy, but the other part is he just does not care for Owen. And I think he should stay on that track, like until Owen proves himself, because he is around all the time for what? Like I get
bringing
like
Nancy dinner. Like I'm not buying it, dude.
Yeah, he feels like there's a lot of open threads with him. Like he showed up for the start of the Hudson storyline in that episode, and then that was never. It's not that it wasn't followed through on, but you didn't get the answer you'd expect, and then it was quickly dropped. He showed up at Nancy's house with dinner, and then that was quickly dropped for the story. So I definitely feel like this is very much intentional. They're putting Owen everywhere to make us think a lot of things, but I definitely think there's more to him than that. And the best one of all stuck out because they invested so much in the story and then invested so little in this episode, and there has to be more to it than that.
There just has to be. And the plan, he just goes along with the plan that Bess comes up with, which she's the cutest, because walking out of that conversation between Ryan and George, and she's like, I can't, I'm just, don't mind me. And she's like looking for whatever she's looking
the
for.
most absurdly large scar pickles. She's like, oh, found it. And George is like, whatever, you need to do.
I know. And it's like, I do wonder, like, Bess, what did you think about Ryan and George? I can't remember does everyone know now about them? I know Nancy knew, and they did like possess George, kissed him, but I don't remember if Bess was around when that happened. Well, she knows now, I guess, because what man walks into the office like that? And
he
like,
was speaking loudly. Yeah. He like wasn't trying to hide it, even though she was in the room. She was on her Nancy shtick with trying to like pocket information. She did not do it subtly.
Just so great. But then the plan doesn't work out because Ryan I think is protecting them from his mom, who her weird comment about, I wonder if she learned from that accident. And it's like, so you cut the brakes then? Because who says that when someone has woken up in the hospital?
Yeah, I feel like Ryan's definitely going to be the character. It's funny because he was the one we all had suspicion with at the start. Now it feels like he'll be that kind of like anti-hero, sounds cliche, but that one that walks the line between both good and bad, but they're not an inherently good person, but they're not an inherently bad person. And he's trying to be better. And it would be really interesting if he turns out by the end of the season to be a better character than Owen is, because obviously you have the whole Marvin versus Hudson kind of rivalry in the background. And it's very much geared towards the Marvin side at the moment. But I'm not sure it will. The Hudsons are horrible, but I mean, I'm not sure it will not be geared towards that way at the end. I do think Ryan will come out of this looking better than Owen, but that's just a theory because I think we're supposed to be suspicious of Owen at this point.
For sure.
I don't
Though
know. Are
Vern has
we,
an
or do we?
issue. What?
Are we supposed to be suspicious of Owen, or do we just have like TV trust issues?
I think we're supposed to be suspicious
Yeah.
of Owen. There are too many
Okay.
like camera cuts to him looking weird
And
about something that's
the
said.
fact that we went from one extreme in the last episode, again, totally cautious about Bess, to being totally cheery about Bess. I believe if you weren't cautious about him before, you absolutely would be now. Because it was a
What
bit
I
of,
want to know
sorry.
is though, did Bess get the results of her test? Because they both ran tests.
Mhm. Yeah.
Mm.
Or
I'm
did
like,
she?
Bess, girl, did 23andMe email you? Like, what happened?
Unless she's still waiting, and that's the shoe that's gonna drop. She'll probably ignore it because she already knows. And Ace will probably read it, or Nancy, because Nancy's nosy, and probably would want some information on Owen. And then it'll come up negative, I'm assuming, or they're might be closer in relation than she thought. I don't know. We'll see.
I love that Nancy just knows everyone's tea. That just reminded me of that. Like she knows she knows that Bess has an accent that hasn't reappeared yet. That I'm like eager to hear again. I don't know if it ever comes back, but she knows she's got everyone's number.
She does. And now she has like Ace's dad's number. We met that man in the
I
episode.
loved seeing more of Ace's life.
Sam.
I
Yeah.
loved it. It was high time.
It
Not to
was.
make a stoner pun on Ace.
But I also love like there's so much character in the episode about him and his father. Like when he says, so when you meet the captain, and Nancy's like, you call your dad the captain? He's like, just go with it, Nancy. He calls his dad the captain. Let's go into this house. And he's like, it's what did he say? It's a bit of a war zone in the house.
Mhm.
And she's like, it looks like regular suburbia. And it's like, just leave him be. He knows what's coming in his house.
Nancy's like, coming from mess, this looks normal.
Yes. Oh, I also like the signing that his and the bit of backstory about how his dad lost his hearing, and poor Ace trying to like, well, his dad can read lips, but also when he was a little frustrated, he would try to sign, but he can only sign with one hand. So he was trying to get the point across, like, let me investigate without you putting your input into it. I can do this.
I loved how Nancy was she approached it very un-Nancy like she walks into that police station like a bull in china shop. She's like, I own this place, but she was very like timid around Ace's dad, her future father-in-law. I'm just gonna manifest it. But yeah, like when she asked him like, can we try to solve the cipher together, I was like, that was so sweet, Nancy. Like you really approached that with care that you don't normally take.
It was funny though that like she solved it in like an hour just by putting the pictures
she was just
together.
like sitting there and was like, these are weird pictures, flops them over together for no reason.
No, and I feel like the dynamic, of course, the Nancy and Ace's father dynamic was lovely, but also the dynamic between Ace and his father, that was such an endearing relationship throughout the whole episode. And it was just nice. Not that I don't think Ace ever didn't have his father's approval, but I feel like that you did a good job in the end. It was just such a like lovely, quiet moment as far as Ace goes. And I'm totally with Reed on that. It was lovely just to see more of his backstory, because we always said he's kind of the mysterious. He's been the chauffeur. He's been the waiter. He's always in the background of the main stories. And it was nice to see him directly involved, especially after off the back of 2 or 3 episodes without him actually being in them.
And we felt that absence actually, because when he came back, I was like, I missed you. Hi, what are we doing this episode?
I know, but did the newspaper have to drag him like that? I mean, I know he's a dishwasher, but it was like local dishwasher. Come on.
I know, they could have done cop son, like retired cop son as a hero or something.
He was so proud of it though, still, my sweet prince.
I know though, like the OG Ace and Nancy shippers put those two newspapers together and it was like proof that one day it will be these two.
But I feel like the ship watch, like the sail was up because Nancy and Ace, as soon as they're reunited, they have a moment where they both like apologize to each other. And I immediately was like, I don't know why you're apologizing to each other, but I'm appreciating this moment. And they just kept having these shared moments, like even in the end when they all left Nancy's house, which by the way, I was like, Nancy, why don't you want someone to stay with you? Beside the point. She said good night to Ace first, and they had there was like this like tension in the air. And I was like, I'm picking up on it. I don't know if they're picking up on it, but there's something happening. And then he leaves and she says goodnight to Nick. I'm curious to hear both of your thoughts, but especially Sabrina's about Shipwatch.
I am taking all the juice and crumbs that I could possibly get while they still exist. It was funny that to go back to when Nick and Nancy first see each other again, it parallels her same interaction with Nick. It's got the same amount of tension in it. And she already told Nick how he's asking me, and then does it, and then immediately her phone rings. I was like, but why does when Ace asks you how are you, it feel a little different? Like you're actually going to answer instead of saying people are keep asking you that. Then they did the same thing at the end with the goodbyes, where it's similar, but like there's tension with Nancy and Ace, and there's tension with Nancy and Nick, but Nick immediately shuts it down. Now he has a wall. Now that might be because he had like a really great scare today, and he was all like up on her and was nervous, and I was like, he still loves her. And I knew it's only been like a few days, so I know that was still true. But is he gonna immediately shut down, or are we gonna have a talk? He immediately shuts down after being that emotional, which, you know what, fair, fine. The relationship is over. You want it to be over, but I saw that panicked far more than George did. And I think Nancy and Ace, the flag is up. The flag is up. It's a slow burn though. I could see it being a slow burn. By the way, they had awkwardness tension because the last thing she said to him was that she didn't want to see him. Remember,
that's right.
He lied. He withheld information, and she got upset about it, and then
That's when they were in like that, like the warehouse at the Claw, and he was like, "I'm gonna fix this."
That's right.
Is that the scene?
Yeah, that's the scene. And then she feels guilty.
Was in the fact that he got into the car with Laura and then tried to record I think he was trying to prove himself to Nancy to make up for it, because wasn't he recording Laura in the car and there was the crash and they never made up for that. But no, totally agree. As soon as S returned, there was definitely like that moment, and then I think it kind of, I remembered about that weird dynamic between them before, over where he said, "I'm going to fix this," but I was like, hold a minute, they're really, really, really playing this feels like out of nowhere, because they've had a couple of moments here and there. But this episode, I totally agree. It felt like she had moments with all three of the men in her life. And that may have been intentional to be like a turning point, because you had the Ace moments, you had the Owen moments, and the one where he showed up at her house still feels like it came out of nowhere. So I feel like maybe they're important character moments to make us feel one way about Owen when we maybe should be feeling the other way. But I think probably most pivotal of them all was the final Nick and Nancy scene, because I think that was it now, because this episode kind of made it feel like, could they rekindle that? Because there's still obviously something there between them. But I think obviously his concern over Nancy's life, and then the way he held on to her so tightly when she came back to life, and then the fact that he was the last one, he stuck around. It felt like she had finally maybe learned her lesson to open up to people more, and then that's when he put up the walls, because he was like, that's what friends do. I think that was her turning point, where she was like, okay, this is what I can do with people, and he was like, no, we're not doing that again. So it was, if she'd learned that lesson 3 or 4 episodes ago, there would have been a future for them. But I feel like this episode was designed to make us wonder who is the man in Nancy's life. But by doing so, it also took Nick out of the equation once and for all. And again, like, I'm just literally talking about a Stargirl 3-season slow burn romance. I can do this with Nick or Nancy and S. I can do this. But I think right now it's going to pivot to Owen, and maybe that's when we'll find out what is there behind Owen's smile? Is there darkness? Is there genuineness, or is he actually someone she needs to put her Nancy Drew cap on and investigate? I think maybe he'll be will he be the danger right beneath her nose that she didn't say? We'll have to say. But I do think of all the men in her life, Owen might be the next path she follows.
That's an interesting. That's a good point. From my perspective, it feels like Owen is bouncing checks. Like she's not she's not doing it. But I think you're right. I think she does want to like kind of keep him positioned on the outskirts, and I think it could be a pivotal relationship for her, just to like, if anything with Bess does come to light, Nancy can be the one to slip in because she has a good like rapport with Owen. She can kind of use that to her advantage to like free Bess or whatever. um for me, the Nick stuff was kind of giving like closure, especially when they brought her back to life. It was very clear to me that why maybe it's in retrospect, knowing what I know what happens in this series. I was taking into account that it was Nancy, Nick, and George. And he's so excited. He like wraps his arms around Nancy when she comes back to life. And then immediately after, he grabs George's hand. And I don't think anything in that scene, for me at least, this is my reading, was romantic. I think he was just excited that Nancy was back. And there, even though they may not be in love, there is still love there, obviously. But he was also sharing that moment with George by grabbing her hand. And then even at the end, when he does put that wall up with Nancy, I feel like part of me was like, good for you. Like, put that boundary there. Like, don't reopen old wounds. Like, you deserve that for you. Like, that relationship was not good for you, Nick. Like, put that boundary up and like do that. As much as it like, I do kind of wish, like, we're only 10 episodes into the season. I kind of wish there was more Nick and Nancy content. But yeah, it's really interesting to like kind of, Nancy's love life hasn't really been super explicit, not in like a explicit in like a parent, I guess. Not explicit in like, not that kind of explicit. So just picking up on these like small character moments, it's really another thrilling part of this show and this journey.
It is, because to highlight the closure part, she literally closes the door behind him and then when she turns around on the door and she says, "I failed." So, well, her voiceover says, "I failed," and I was like, oh, okay, well, that's the end. I love them while they were here. I mean, they'll have moments and whatnot. It'll just be in the realm of platonic, which is fine. But I also like, did you guys pick up on the fact that Ace does something opposite to Nick in terms of his interactions with Nancy? He's very forceful in being like, "We are your friends. We're going to be here." It's always him doing that. Nick always asked. Ace isn't asking, he's just doing. And Nancy is responding to that more because she just has to go forward. It's not one of those things where she has to disappoint someone. Ace isn't going to be disappointed because this is the thing that we're doing. So either get on board or, you'll be left behind. sort of thing. And it's
giving
working.
Nancy options isn't always the best option.
And he doesn't. So that might be the dynamic she needs in her life.
There's definitely something with Ace that she responds to, just not even like on a romantic level. Like, we see all of her interactions one-on-one with each of these characters, probably the most out of any other character. So we see like what kind of dynamic she responds to, and there's something that she really picks up on with Ace and George too. Like, they're two presences in her life that are like very, I mean, George is a little bit more aggressive in her approach to friendship, which I think a lot of people need. Whereas like with Bess, Nancy takes on like a more, I don't want to say maternal, but like it is a little bit more maternal. We see her like when Ace was in the hospital, she's the one that comforts Bess. And when Bess is comforting Nancy in this episode, Nancy's the one to like comfort her. So like we see all these different dynamics with them. And there's just so much in this show to like pick up in the little moments.
There is. It's so nice. I will say though that I am officially going to lay my flowers on the grave of Trueston as a ship. Um, because it just definitely felt final. I did see a pic though on the press site that has me asking some questions, and I don't know if it's from I won't give away what episode it is, but I saw the picture and I was like, I know you're not circling back because I already know that you two don't make it. So I don't know what's happening here, but I would like to get all the information once we get to that episode.
Ooh, maybe in the run up to like Nace going official, they need to have like a moment.
That would be interesting if they had like a bench moment where they discuss it. Don't get our hopes up, y'all. Though I know like Nace is the ship, and people really like Fanson. That's what we were told. The ship name for Nick and George is it's Fanson, which means that you will have a fire that happens in the fandom if you do the two big fandom ships, and then by the end it's Nick and Nancy, like serious finale, Nick and Nancy right off into the sunset together. Like the internet will be on fire. So yeah, don't tease too much, right? I would love it, but don't tease too much.
Was there I'm struggling to remember now. Was there like a cliffhanger, or was that was just Nancy calling her dad, right?
Yeah, it's just Nancy calling her dad. Did you think she felt Lucy though? Because she smiled right before she said yes.
Oh, I don't know. She kind of was just like not really paying the ghosts any mind in this episode. I felt like
she had that like long dramatic pause, like before she said yes, I'll accept the charges. And isn't that the moment then Lucy got sucked out the door as I'm like, yep, Nancy, you did the right thing.
It was a really long dramatic pause. I was like, Nancy, girl, you gotta they're gonna disconnect the call. You gotta make a choice.
So no, there's no cliffhangers. I don't know. Really going into episode 11, kind of blind. There's I don't really know what's next because this was a very contained episode. It was another contained one.
Yeah, and I think that's what I've said this so much. I sound like a broken record at this point. It managed to make its standalone episodes tie into the story really well, in that it never feels like a villain of the week or anything like that. Because yes, Nancy nearly died in this episode. So first of all, there's something really major. She addressed a lot of her own trauma like she did in the previous episode. So again, that's something really major. But even the smallest thing, like the fact is that she knows now that Tiffany was poisoned, and that it was the same poison that this serial killer has been using, but the serial killer wasn't the one behind it. So I feel like we did get some important things, mini cliffhangers to take into the overall story, even if the episode didn't end on a huge jaw-dropping one.
That's true. And there's the vase that Ryan has, which I couldn't really see the surface of it. I was like, can I use any type of 7th grade knowledge about like Greek mythology? What is almonds?
You're like, come on, push. Come on, world history.
Yes. But another great episode of Nancy Drew in the books for us. Cannot wait to watch episode 11. We're getting up there.
Season 1 will be done in no time.